No, I know what a camera is, but actually, I hate those cameras. And like, my dad's the old guy. He's the one that can work any kind of camera. He loves photography. I can't.
Done.
I don't even think that.
All right, thank you all for being here tonight. It's great to see everyone. I'm so glad you could make it. I'm Lori Soderlind. I know most of you here, but not all of you. I'm the director of the MFA program, the MFA Creative Writing program at Manhattanville College. And we're going to have a slightly unusual format tonight. We're going to do a conversation first. Sigrid Nunez and I will have a conversation, and then Sigrid will do a reading for us, and we'll open it up to a Q&A after that. So you'll have plenty of time to be inspired to ask many questions. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction first before Sigrid comes up and joins us, because I've been reading her books and thinking about her work, and I have some things I want to say, basically. If you've read Sigrid Nunez's most recent novel, The Friend, you'll understand immediately that she's an author who values the art of writing. And more than that, she's an author who values the idea that literary arts are essential to our culture. And more than even that, she's an author who came of literary age, if you will, in a world that revered the finest writers as gifted truth-tellers. And she's an author who quotes Rilke, who said, "Writing is a religion requiring the devotion of a priest." In truth, if you've read anything Sigrid Nunez has written, you'll understand all of those things. You'll know that she's an author of this rare and I think very precious type, by which I mean she's of the world of writers, whose work reaches for ideas so far deeper than the page, the surface of the page. Writers who approach writing as an art in a world in which it's often engaged more like a sport. I say this in part because of the subjects of many of her books. The Friend is a meditation on the death of the narrator's literary mentor. And before that, Nunez's memoir, Sempre Susan, explored the lasting impact of her close relationship with the author and intellectual Susan Sontag. But Nunez belongs, I think, to this kind of late 20th century, early 21st century canon of esteemed authors, really just because her prose is so good, right? Words come up in reviews, if you read her reviews and in articles about her work and in interviews with her. All these words are trying all the time to pin down the quality of her writing. It's lucid and confident and direct. It conveys vivid immediacy, uncompromising honesty. And it's doing all those things while it's grappling with ideas. And that's really an achievement. So it's no wonder that she wowed what we might call the literary establishment right out the gate. She wrote her first novel, A Feather on the Breath of God, and it was a finalist for the PEN/Hemingway Award for First Fiction. From there, she went on to write 6 more novels and a memoir, steadily accumulating a raft of honors from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, from the Lannan Foundation, the American Academy in Rome, the American Academy in Berlin. The Americans have academies all over. And just this month, The Friend was named a finalist for this year's National Book Award. So if you know Nunez's work already, none of this surprises you. And if you're new to her work through our Fall Writers Weekend, I am so happy to have had a hand in introducing you to this author. I'm going to have a chat with her, and then we're going to have a reading, and then we'll open the mic up to your questions. And please join me in welcoming Sigrid Nunez.
I get 2 cushions.
Okay. All right.
I was wondering about that.
Would you like 2 cushions? Would you like 3? You could do 3. We're comfortable?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, you can hear all right?
We don't know yet. If you have trouble hearing either one of us, please say, "I can't hear you."
Okay.
We'll fix it.
You can hear us though.
Okay.
All right.
So, there's a lot of things that I want to ask, and I have limited time, so I decided to go really big first, and then we'll narrow down. So, I've been thinking about the 23 years of writing you've done since Feather on the Breath of God came out. You've been publishing steadily since that book came out in 1995. Every couple of years there's another book. For a while it was a book a year. That's a really impressive level of what I might call artistic stamina, and there's a lot of writers, and there's almost everyone in the room is a writer. How are you doing that?
Well, some of the books are short. And I guess, I don't know, I just, you know, it's what I want to be doing. It's what I knew I wanted to be doing from an early age. And, you know, once school was finished, you know, that was actually my goal. Any kind of job that I had was, you know, some kind of really unimportant job. I didn't seek another profession. A job that I just had to make ends meet to support my writing habit, as it were. And it's true that if you, you know, if it's something that you do all the time, you know, a book every 2 years, as long as it's not a, you know, 700-page book, or something, you know, some nonfiction work that requires an enormous amount of research, you know, as far as the rate of pages, it's really not that. You know, not that much. The production is really not that much, but the steadiness of it is what kept me going. And as I said, just because it's what I want to do, what I do.
So you set your mind to doing it, and then just kept doing it. And now, if you didn't do it, what would you do?
Yeah, see, that's right. That's right. What would I do? I don't know. It would be very strange. It would really be very strange to not be writing after all this time. But it's true also that, you know, you write a book because you have an idea for a book or a story that you want to tell, and I have had something, he said, when I finished whatever I was working on, or towards that point, I would think, you know what I'd like to do next, and I would have an idea. I suppose if, you know, that stopped, which very well might do, then I would think maybe I could do something else for a while until I had a good idea, or an idea that was inspiring to me for another book, or for stories, or whatever.
So you could do something else in the interim, like?
I have no idea what I would do.
Starbucks?
I have no idea what I would do.
No particular
It would be strange. It would be very strange.
Dawn Walker?
I wouldn't feel like myself. That's true.
Feather on the Breath of God, which, by the way, is one of my favorite titles for a book. I love that title. Was published in 1995, and I'm putting the numbers. I'm doing a little writer's math in my head, and I'm thinking that you finished up your MFA at Columbia maybe 15 years or so before that. So I think, particularly because so many people in our audience are MFA students or alumni, that 15-year or so gap, that's the part where most people give up. Can you tell us what was going on for you in that time?
Yeah, see, that's interesting, because you were just talking about bringing out, you know, being very productive since 1995. It's true. During that time, after getting the MFA, I was writing. I was writing. I wasn't writing as much as I would later, but I was writing stories, a few of which got published. I had started some novels, longer works that didn't carry through. So I kind of think of those 15 years as like a long apprenticeship. You know, I mean, I wasn't so good at it that I was able to work every day. You know, what happened. The thing is that the book that came out in 1995 was actually finished in 1993, but you know, that's how long it took to get it out there. So, but still, it was a long period of time. I would try to write certain things like stories, and then I would try to sell them. There were a lot of rejections. There were some acceptances, but I was still the same person. I mean, I had some jobs. I worked at the New York Review of Books. I taught ESL. I did various things, but I didn't pursue another, serious career during that time.
So you were writing all along?
I was writing all along, just not well, and not steadily, and not every day, and not with very much confidence.
So that's as I say, I think that's the time when most people give up. It's that time between maybe you did an MFA and you're feeling really confident, but then this time passes and it's not happening, and it's very easy at that point to say, just to get distracted, I think, if not to consciously give up.
Right. But then people have lives, though. They do pursue other things. They have families, which I didn't do.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you were steadily at it, and you talk about in that time you were writing some short stories and publishing shorter pieces. What are your thoughts on publishing shorter pieces now? You write books. Do you really focus on the books, or? I
focus on the books. I mean, I have written some stories over these years of writing the novels, but I don't have a collection. The stories that I have, I don't see a collection there, even though numerically there's enough, that kind of thing. So I don't think of, I do write stories, but I don't think of myself as a story writer.
My observation just is, I love writing short essays. I'm a nonfiction writer, but it seems to me that the world of the short story and the essay are things that writers write for other writers these days. There was a time when short stories were published in every magazine and they were everywhere. It seems to me now short stories are good practice, essays are good practice, but books are nothing.
But there are quite a few collections, though, of stories now that for a couple of years now they've been getting very serious attention. So I know that. Publishers don't seek them out, but they do publish them, and there are some very good ones.
That's good. That's inspiration to our fiction writers. That it's not just practice, but it's its own craft, and it has value and a place in the world. I was saying in my introduction, your writing is genuinely literary because it's at times taken on literary topics like The Friend, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, but. More broadly, your books have this intelligence to them that there's always a current of ideas underneath the actual story in your novel, at least to me as a reader, it seems that way. And as I teach and I run an MFA program, and I watch writers developing their skills, and it seems to me that the ability to accomplish this idea that you're telling a story, but you're really kind of trying to get at something else through your story, mostly it comes to writers who read well. That by reading well, or reading the right books, learning to read well, that's how you kind of learn to write. And I wonder if you agree with that or not, or even if you agree with my assessment that your books are always trying to get at something under the story.
Well, I do think that workshops are all fine and good, but I do think that you learn to write from reading other writers. That's just true. So it's hard. I can't imagine how I ever would have had any ideas or anything if I weren't a big reader. But it's not absolutely true. For example, the one writer that I can think of, Don DeLillo. Because you always hear about writers that they all were writing as kids. It's something that starts really young in a writer. But Don DeLillo has said that until he was in his 20s, I think, he'd only read comic books. He didn't read what was assigned in school. He certainly didn't read novels. He had no interest in literature. And then he became, an extremely serious, dedicated writer who produced all these wonderful books. But that's very rare. Most writers have been, book lovers when they were little kids. And as far as ideas, although then you also have a lot of writers who say they can't read while they're writing, so they don't want to be polluted, or or influenced. I'm a writer, not a reader. V.S. Naipaul said very haughtily once. It seems to me that you end up formed by your reading. What you read ends up being what you think. And that's where a lot of your ideas come from. And so, you know, I don't think when I'm writing, I don't think about the ideas. I don't think about ideas first. I never. I don't think, oh, I want to write a book and then have some abstract idea about, you know, human experience or something. You know, it's a character or a story that I start with, and then in the exploration of whatever's happening to that character in the world, I suppose certain ideas occur to me, and then they make their way into the book. But I don't think of the, you know, I don't plan anything about the meaning or the ideas that the book will have. It's always just the story.
So you think about the story.
Or the characters.
Really. And the characters, because the characters are the story, right?
Yeah.
There's no story without the characters. And as you explore what they're experiencing, you discover something underneath the story of them that you're telling about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you don't just write. You know, you say what's happening to these characters, and then the characters have thoughts, the characters have ideas, the ideas come out of the situation that they're in. But it's not like a non-fiction piece where where you're trying to make an argument, an intelligent argument about why, you know, why America should go in this direction instead of that direction, and then you bolster that argument with examples from the, you know, where you really have to figure things out in a certain way. I don't feel like that's what I'm writing when I'm writing. I don't, you know, even though some of that might end up in the book.
Can you, just kind of circling back a little bit to my idea that, you know, becoming a writer means being a very good reader. You teach at all kinds of excellent programs, including she's teaching here this weekend. What would you ask your students? What do you think is the essential reading today for a starting writer?
I couldn't say, because I think that writers have, you know, they have certain people whom they think of as their people. You know, like I sometimes ask my students in the first class, well, so I'm not asking you who your favorite writer is or what your last book is, but we all have people. That is, those writers that made you want to be a writer, or that writer whose work, every novel they've written, you've read. That writer about whom you think when you're writing, yes, I want to get some of that into my own work. Now, you don't necessarily have to write like that person, because one of my people was Virginia Woolf, but you wouldn't see that in my writing. My writing is nothing like Virginia Woolf's, even though I did write a book about Virginia Woolf. But you know,
you're thinking maybe a lot like
right,
Virginia Woolf.
But the thing is that I'm really thinking about the style, right? So I feel like you have to find that yourself. I wouldn't say, oh, you should, you know, everyone should read this writer or that writer. Everyone should read, you know, this contemporary writer, because I think you have something you have to find. You have to find for yourself.
So just read.
Yeah, just read. I mean, just read. You know, read what you want to read, not what, you know. And also, people are so afraid about. It's very intimidating. Like I'm with Borges when he said,